Okay, here we go. Welcome to the Mind Body Energy Project.
Yes, welcome. Thank you for joining us again.
So Tiffany and I are here to talk about being an empath today, which is like near and dear to both of our hearts.
Hmm.
So, there are so many people who are empaths and have no clue, which was my case. I'll tell you
Same
about
here.
later. But yeah, so we're really excited about this topic. Today we're going to talk about being an empath and managing it. And then next week we'll talk about the types of empaths because that's a
Hmm.
whole nother conversation. So Tiffy,
Yes,
how was your week, honey?
my week. It's been pretty exhausting.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of energy going around and it just sucks you dry. And especially if you're an empath and you don't do the
Manage it.
self-care, if you don't manage it and you don't do the self-care. And admittedly, I haven't been doing that this week, so I'm paying for it.
Bad girl.
I know, I know, I know.
You know better.
I do know
No.
better.
And
But
especially in the week of a full moon too, like, honey.
it snuck up on me. I forgot that there was a full moon coming, and I looked out the window last night and I was like, oh my God, you glorious thing. And then I was like, now I get it. Now I understand what's happening a little bit.
That's actually a good intro for this particular conversation because
Thank
the
you.
full moon was in Pisces, and that energy of Pisces is, it's ruled by Neptune, dissolving the illusion. Oh, I feel connected to everything. They can feel everything and merge with everything. Well, that reminds me a lot of being an empath.
Yeah.
And if we are just picking up on everything and merging with everything, and not being able to discern what is ours and what isn't, that's what makes it maddening. So
Hmm.
I want to start with your story. What has it been like for you being an empath prior to knowing what that was, and then after finding out what that was, and what it
Uh,
even means to you?
okay. It's kind of a blurred line, really, because I think I have always been so sensitive. Hold on, I had a sneeze. Oh, I'm gonna try to make that go away. Okay, sorry. Um, Ever since I was a kid, like I always just like felt very deeply for people when they were emotional. And it was confusing because having experienced that at a very young age, I started to build a lot of walls and I quickly built a fortress around myself and around my emotions as a small child and carried that with me through probably through till my late 20s.
Mm-hmm.
And then I like to think of it as like I built this fortress and all of that stuff was staying inside me, crystallizing, and then it started coming out physically in the form of anxiety and various other kinds of physical ailments that I had to deal with. Um, and then I started to understand um, emotional intelligence and really diving deep into self exploration to try to understand why I was so blocked and starting, to undo that fortress and really experiencing emotions. And then once I started experiencing my own emotions and I started experiencing everybody else's emotions, I mean, like from seeing some stranger in an airport, like seeing him from a distance and feeling like I was going to cry and emulating kind of what he was going through. And it was bizarre. I'm like, I don't know what's happening right now, And then once I saw like the situation that was happening with his family, I was like, oh, he's leaving his family. Like, no wonder he's this deeply sad. And he got in line behind me at the airport and I wanted to hug him so badly and just be like, I know what you're going through. It's okay. But I know how freaking weird that is to people.
But it
Especially,
shouldn't be.
it shouldn't be. It
I
shouldn't be.
know.
But we're not used to people understanding us or sensing us,
Seeing us.
seeing us and sensing our emotions because we have become such an individualized culture where we block it off and we say don't don't pay attention to your emotions, stifle them, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So um what being an empath means to me, I really love it because it helps me really, like you said, see people and give them the space to be who they are and create a safe space. But when it's not managed well, it's very tolling on the individual who is the empath.
Yeah.
And so I bounce around a lot with how I'm still very much learning how to manage it.
Yeah, well, we're going to talk about all of that too. I mean, I think
Yeah.
it's an important thing for people to know. And my story was similar in that, you know, even listening to you made me think about at a very young age, I think partially even due to how I was raised, which is funny because I just did a podcast today about me and my shadow. That was
Mm,
like literally the title, Me and My Shadow. But I was talking about how I stuffed emotion a lot because of how I was raised. But the thing is that I was very sensitive to everything. But I
mm-hmm.
also had this external, you know, teaching of like stuff emotion, don't access it, don't acknowledge it type of thing. So I would do the same. Like I would sense other people's stuff, but I would shut down and just like want to go into a shell and not want to
Yeah.
be around people. And then as I got older, like even in my teenage years, I joke about this all the time. My friends would always be like, Yolanda, if I was meeting someone new, my friends would, you know, beforehand be like, be nice. Because if I got around someone and their energy was strange to me, I didn't know what it was back then, but I would meet
Yeah.
someone and immediately be like, mm-mm, like,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
I don't want to be around them. I'm not talking to them. And I had no poker face and I didn't even care. I wasn't trying to go with the niceties. I was just like, no, like,
Yeah.
I can't. But I didn't know why back
Right.
then. So I just seemed like a weirdo. But in that, it did make me very, I think part of being so sensitive energetically is also maybe what contributed to me being so introverted in a lot of ways,
Mm-hmm.
and like really always wanting to be in my own space, my own bubble, not around crowds or a lot of people and all of these different things. Then when I got into this work, it was the first time I even heard the term empath. And it was like, oh, people who are highly sensitive to other energies, and oh yeah, they have a hard time in crowds and this and that. I was like, oh my God, that's me. So what does it mean? And
Yeah.
then what I realized, you know, was like, oh, I'm able to feel and sense people's energies. But before I knew how to translate what I was sensing, I went into automatic judgment and would just shut down and I don't want to be around you.
Mm-hmm.
Where if I had known back then, I may have been sensing people's sadness, their hurt, their fear, which case you might want to hug them. I
Yeah.
wouldn't have, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's really interesting when you think about the way that it can impact you, especially if you don't know what's happening.
Yeah. It's funny, it's interesting when you said that. I kind of was the opposite. So before I really understood it, I was just kind of like throwing myself to the wolves all the time and, not knowing it. If
Mhm.
somebody was sad or like something was going on, I would be the first one to be there. And I still am. But I never protected myself then. So I would be, picking up a lot of these energies and then having to deal with them thinking they were mine. And that
Mhm.
caused a lot of ruckus for me and for my minds and really
Yeah.
understanding it now after the fact. I mean, that's still a little bit of a problem now. It's not totally clear because we're always going to be ever evolving in our understanding of it. But now I kind of like, when I see people that I feel something like that makes me a little bit standoffish, I do kind of like step back and be like, now I'm just like trying to figure out their energies. Now I'm like, what's going on here before I die fully in.
Yeah.
Or if I do die fully in, I'm shielding first and then being like, okay, what's this energy that's happening here?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I do the same. Like well, now because of recognizing what it is and like living into being like a conscious empath, because I think that's the difference. Like either you're consciously aware of it or you're not. And
Yeah.
even if you are aware of it, then there's the layer of managing your space and knowing how to work with
Hmm.
it, right? So one of the things I do is I always manage my own field before I'm going to interact with the world or anyone, like one-on-one. I have to, because I already
Yeah.
know, the potential of me matching someone else's energy or picking up on it. So I automatically go into a space of like preparing myself before engagement even happens. But then it's interesting now because I think, and it may be in part of me being so shielded before, like now I've kind of found a sweet spot where I can be around people and engage, and I can sense their energy. I can translate in all this, read things, that's fine. But I don't take it on at all. It's just like,
Yeah.
I feel like I'm watching a movie like, oh, that's interesting. Like that. I can observe it, sense it, but not bring it all in like, oh, I
Yeah.
feel your pain. Like, no, thanks.
And that's because you're being responsible and managing your energy. And I think that's a huge thing to point out to listeners. Like, that's how you do it.
Well, too, I think, and I want to ask you about this because a lot of empaths, I think, even when you start talking to them about the option of managing their energy, some people equate feeling things so deeply as caring. Like, I'm
Mm.
showing that I care because I feel their pain, I feel their hurt, and
Yeah.
if I don't relate or come down to match their energy, then I must not care, and that's not true. So,
No, that's a
so
very, very good point.
what has been your experience with that, whether in your own empathic nature or in witnessing it in others?
Well, actually, I want to go back a little bit because I had just remembered like what my experience was that really proved to me that I was an empath. And this actually is a good segue into the question that you just asked. I've been a personal trainer for a long time, and as Yolanda knows, I take things on very physically as messengers. My body is my biggest messenger. And my knee would be bothering me one day, and like knee problems are not my thing. There's other things that are my things, but knee problems aren't it. So like my knee would be bothering me. And then like 2 days later, I'd see one of my clients and they'd be like, oh, I'm having this knee issue. And I'm like, that's so weird because I just did all this research on how the knee moves and like what the joint is set up like and how certain muscles are, you know, intertwined into the joint and all this stuff. And I'm like, it's perfect. I'm glad my knee was hurting because now I can help you. And that would happen often. Like I would literally take on whatever my clients physically were hurting a couple of days before, do the research, and then find out that they were having issues. And I'm like, this is kind of weird, you know? So
Yeah.
that kind of pushed me into really understanding what an empath was. So what you're talking about is matching frequencies. And this is, it's such a good topic. I don't think that I think there's more strength in being able to keep your vibration high and bringing that person up with you
Yes.
versus bringing both energies down to match it, because then that's then we're alluding to misery loves company, right? And
Yes.
we're trying to raise this
Uplift.
vibration. Yeah.
Yeah.
But there is something very different between being able to see somebody's pain and acknowledge it versus trying to have them see you having their pain also.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's kind of where we might go wrong a little bit, is that like to some degree we're wanting to be seen also, if we come down to that lower vibration where we think we're helping them be seen, where it's like, no, like truly put yourself aside, stay grounded in your vibration and see that person, versus getting down into that rabbit hole, then turning the flashlight on yourself and be like, see, I'm here too. No,
Yeah.
be outside of the rabbit hole, throw a rope down and try to bring them up. But know that they're down there and be like, I see that you're down a rabbit hole. Let me help you come back up out of it.
Yeah. I think that we get confused with the idea of like wanting so badly to resonate with it, to relate. Like, I think we confuse it
Yeah.
with relatability. Like, oh,
Yes.
you
Very
feel
much so.
terrible. Well, let me show you. I see, even visually, like we mirror
Yeah.
each other. We do all of these things to seem relatable, which
Yeah.
is a very caring, I mean, it's a interesting response to have. But to your point, no, it is very important for us to maintain our own field and not come down. We don't have to come down to hold compassion. We don't
Yeah.
have to come down to see someone else or hold space for them. I think
Right.
that's a huge lesson for all of us in our lives, but especially if you're going to be holding space for people as like a healer or a mentor or a practitioner. Like, you are the space holder. Like,
Right.
you have to maintain like that energetic strength, so to speak.
Yeah.
But you bring up another thing in what you shared that reminds me of the importance of empaths being mindful of their energy as well, in terms of picking things up. So in my very first Reiki class, I was practicing on friends, and that was part of how I was learning. And one of my friends at the time, she had a knee very similar to your story. Her knee was out, and so I went to her house, and I was working on her leg, on her knee, her bad knee. But when I left, I didn't clear my space. I didn't ground. I didn't do any kind of mindful disconnection or separation. I just came home. And you remember the steps that led up to my old apartment?
Mm-hmm.
So I get home and I literally tripped up the stairs and fell and banged the same knee that she had injured on, the same side.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God. And it was like, I knew right away, like, oh my God, I can't believe I just hurt the same knee as my friend has hurt. And when I talked to my teacher about it the following week, she was like, did you clear your space after you worked on her? And I was like, no. And she's like, you took on her frequency and and it like the same, I was trying to match her resonance.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it is very important to not only be aware of your field and what you're sensing, but also, again, not to take it on as your own. Because
yeah. And I think that there's a big component of it that, like, our human nature, there's an aspect where we have to translate this energetic stuff through what we know to be true as a human in relating. So our experiences are what give us wisdom and knowledge, and then a way to relate to somebody is to share that experience with them. But I think there's some practice that goes into really understanding what it means to be able to share experience that you've had, but not to the level of misery loves company, not to be like, oh yeah, I went through that too. But it's like, I went through that, but I learned this, and here's how I dealt with it, or here's what I'm still trying to learn through my experience that's similar to yours.
yeah.
And I feel like a lot of people just stop at like, oh my God, I know, me too. And then it's a bitch session versus trying to elevate up from it.
But then it also diverts away from the person who may have initially been the one that was hurting or in pain. And it's like redirecting towards, yourself, or that,
Right.
like, oh, you're hurt. Oh my God, I totally relate. Now here's my story. Listen to all my misery. But it's
which
like,
makes
whoa,
the person you're trying to make feel better feel 10 times worse.
Right. Because you didn't acknowledge them at all. Like, I've seen that more times than I can count. And I've even caught myself doing it. Sometimes I like catch myself. I'm like, whoa, Charlie, like listen to the person's experience, But we do that a lot and get so excited about, wanting to talk about our commonalities even. And then again, like what you said, be seen, be heard. Honey, that oil is really sorry. I put oil on my face right before we did the video because I'm full of bright ideas. So anyway, so I have a split question for you. And with being an empath now, being aware of what it is, can you think of a time where it was maybe not the best experience, and then also a time where you were able to see like, oh, being an empath, pretty cool thing?
Yes.
What'd you do?
Well, I didn't do anything. The bad time was I don't fight or yell or argue much because I'm a Scorpio and it's just bad if I do. But we've all been in situations, and I was in one like in recent times, and it was a really peculiar situation for me. And I was kind of trapped in it too. So like as soon as like this person that engaged me, it was like I couldn't stop I knew better mentally, I knew better emotionally, like I knew better, and I knew the situation that was coming at me too, and I should have handled it better, but I couldn't stop what felt like this tornado wave of energy coming at me that just picked me up and pushed me back out into it. And as I was going through it, and as it felt horrible all over my body and like all in my mind, like all of it felt terrible, I could feel the energy going throughout everybody that was involved to everybody. And it would like the energy just swept me up because I didn't stand in my own energy and in my own knowledge. And that's probably like one of the worst aspects of it and one of my worst situations. But the best ones are, it's every time, especially when I'm doing Reiki on somebody, just being able to pick up on what they need and being able to give them validation that they need, or confirmation of things that they had been working with internally but never really voiced, and I can pick that up and affirm that for them. and then really, like, I really truly feel what they're feeling. I mean, it was crazy. One time in a session, I was doing a session on somebody, and somehow like their grandma came in, and every time I was reconfirming, like, are you here, I would get chills and I would start crying. And it was the craziest thing. And when I shared this with the person that I was doing the Reiki on, she started crying. And it was just like, it was so insane to be able to feel what she was feeling, but also to give that kind of space to somebody that
Yeah.
is necessary and helpful is just, that's the gift of it.
Yeah, no, it is. Mm.
Will you share your best?
I was going to say, how are you going to stop talking right when I take a sip of water?
I don't know.
And I'm
seems
going
like
to
poor
stop.
timing on your part. Tell us right now. What are your best and worst
My
cases?
best and worst. Let's see. The worst.
Let's not say worst. Let's say
Yeah.
Opportunity you could have
The
learned.
most challenging. The most challenging, I'd say, has been, in spaces. Okay, so I mean, it was obviously challenging before I knew what an empath was, but
Mm-hmm.
after becoming aware of what it is, one of the most challenging spaces was one time I went to a psychic fair. You know
Oh,
how they have all the booths set up and they have all these healers and
yeah.
psychics and all these things going on. Well, I did not manage my energy before I went to that event. Back then, naively, I thought, I'm going to a space full of healers. Why? I don't need to manage my space. I'm all going to be around light and love. Shut it up. So I went to this thing around a lot of different energies, but not only just that, people who knew how to intentionally want to like enter into people's fields on purpose. So imagine people who are like psychics and healers, but that have no integrity of privacy energetically, so to speak. So there were some, not all of the people there, but some of the people there, they would like, try to peek into your energy or poke into your field without having permission and all of these things, because that's just, some people do. But being in a space so full of that and like picking up on just everything there, even the people there who wanted to be read and like their desperation to want to know answers, just the amplification of it all. When I left that building, I had a headache like I have never experienced in my life. Like felt like my head was going to split, crack open, fall off. Like it was the worst. And I'm not a headache person really. Like it's a rare thing. I had never in my life had a headache like this. It was just excruciating. And I knew right away, I was like, oh my gosh, one, forget the fact that I need to clear my space, but I should have managed my energy before going into that environment.
Yeah.
So that was definitely the most challenging, but taught me an invaluable lesson. And then I think the most beautiful part of it, I would say the day my stepfather died. So just to like make a long story short, like he went into the hospital to have something checked out, and it was supposed to be like an in and out type of procedure, but something went wrong, and then all of a sudden he's on this decline of like, now he's dying and needs hospice. I mean, it was crazy, like totally unexpected. In fact, like the whole thing happened, I was in getting my master level training, my second master level training in Seattle at the time. So right after my master level training, I'm like on a plane to North Carolina. But I thought I was going there just to see him in the hospital. But then I didn't know everything else that had happened in the meantime. So anyway, by the time I got there, he was there, like he couldn't even speak. Like you couldn't even tell what he was saying. And I thought I was going to be there for like a week, and I was there for like 3 weeks. And but it got to a point where he literally couldn't speak. And the day that he did die, that morning, I knew it. There was just it was the weirdest thing. Like I knew it. And even though he couldn't speak to me, it was like I was totally communicating with him non-verbally. And it wasn't like telepathically. It was just energetically. And I
Mm-hmm.
was literally like allowing myself to tune into his energy. And I was also like, I had this knowing that he could also tune into mine. It was this really strange thing. And so being able to hold space for him as he was dying that day was like the most amazing experience of being an empath and being able to communicate and feel
Yeah.
without need to say things out loud. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was
That's awesome.
probably, I'm glad that came up because I never even thought about that as being like an empathic, like, yay. But that
Yeah.
was the best one. Hmm.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, I love it because I'm kind of thinking of more things that are going to take us completely off subject. So I'm trying to like hold back. But that's
Oh,
kind of part of what I loved about all of this work at this point in time too, is that it just expands your mind to not be afraid of these things. And I've
yeah.
had many, many, many of people pass in my life that I've been close to. And I mean, even from a young age, and I've always had this sense like there's a sadness that they're not here, but there's also this peace that it's like they're not gone,
Right.
and
Yep.
this work has validated that
No, totally.
immensely.
Yeah, I mean, and speaking of that too, it's funny, it kind of ties into the empath thing. When I first, before I started the energy work, and I had an astrology chart reading done, and the woman said, like, oh, you're a healer, but you would do well in hospice. And I was like, not on your life. Like, I would be an emotional mess. Like, I knew that I could not know. Like, even though I didn't know what an empath was, I knew that being around that, like death and people transitioning, would have been too much for me, right?
Yeah.
But interestingly, all of my family works in death,
Yeah.
we've talked about before. But then after having that experience of holding the space for my stepfather when he passed, it was actually like, it felt like such an honor to be able to hold space for someone when they're in that type of transition, because I
Hmm.
mean, that can be, I can't imagine, like one of the most scary experiences of our lifetimes, like
Yeah.
that particular transition. So like to be able to hold space for someone and in that neutral space, like definitely not coming down to match if they're in fear, but to try to
Right.
hold a space of like love and like sturdiness for them. Oh my
Hmm.
gosh, like heck yeah, that's like a gift of being
Yeah.
an empath for sure.
I had a client of mine that I was really close with for like 10 years, and I trained her for a long time, like twice a week to once a week for 8 years, and she passed away. And there's a lot of crazy stories of like pictures and stuff we have that kind of just prove all of this life after death stuff. But a few months after she had passed, I had this really, really, really very vivid, real dream that I helped her, like, well, after I relived it out loud and with her daughter, it was like it seemed like I was helping her cross over, which was really crazy because in the dream, like, she was scared to do something, and like I was there holding space for her, and she's like, it's okay, like, go. And it was very profound when I shared it with the daughter and we were talking about it. I'm like, whoa. But again, it's being able to hold that space is so important.
Well, now that we're talking about it, I've been doing this online class, and the last topic we had was being multidimensional. And I didn't even think about the empathic leg of that. But
Hmm.
now, like listening to you and the conversation we're having, it's reminding me of how much being an empath shows just how like multifaceted we are, and our ability to tune into the various states of consciousness, awareness, like imprints, information, all of these
Hmm.
things that go so far beyond the physical realm. And
Yeah.
even you, like, having those experiences in a dream state, which is just, like another state of consciousness,
Right.
but it still allowed you like the space to facilitate something that is no less real than had it happened like in the waking state, in the material,
Right.
like when you start thinking of things in that way, it's really amazing like how dynamic we are,
Hmm.
and again
And
what
I
we're capable of.
totally, and I think this is a really good point to point out, or a really good point in our conversation to point out that some people might be listening and be like, oh, I'm not an empath. And so these things that you're saying right now don't apply to me. However, we all have the capacity for this as a human and as a soul. This is what kind
Our
of the package
design.
deal is. It's our design. Yeah. But, you know, maybe some of us haven't chosen that path. So we aren't as sensitive as other people, you know, so some of the stuff might sound weird. That doesn't mean that you're cut out of this population. It means if you want to access that, you're more than welcome to.
Yeah.
But if also you hear some of the stories that are not so beautiful about this and you don't want to do it, you don't have to do it either. Some of us,
Yeah.
our souls chose it and left our human form absolutely no choice. I'm one of those people. So we're just kind of just going and learning with what we're being given.
But I mean, I think it's really good what you said, because everyone to know, I mean, it's part of our design, and we are all able to perceive what is non-physical.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing with that too is that sometimes some of us are like pushed into it a little more deeply, because of a lot of people become hypersensitive because of like trauma, like especially in childhood. Like if we had, you know, like something kind of chaotic in our home lives, and we had to be
Mm-hmm.
more observant, and we had to be able to read the energy of what was going on in the home, as
Yeah.
not to like, you know, maybe like set off a parent or cause somebody to flip out on us. So a
Right.
lot of people do develop this like in a highly sensitive way, especially if they had to, it was almost like a survival mechanism in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And then just like you said, I mean, some of us just come in like hypersensitive, but we all have that capacity. But I wanted to tell you another like little piece that came up in the class. It was just a really quick example that came through. I was channeling, and they gave this example of being in a sandbox. So they were saying about like how, imagine that we're sitting, like imagine you're sitting in a sandbox all by yourself as like this little kid, and you're so fixated on the sand castle that you're building. Oh my God, like it's all you see is your little sand castle. Using your imagination, you're like so wrapped up in this thing. Meanwhile, there are all these other kids on the playground around you, but you have no awareness of them because you are totally fixated on your sandcastle, what you're building. That's it. That's all. But the moment like maybe your sandcastle falls, or like something distracts you, or you just take a breath and just happen to look up, you recognize that there's all these other people around you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the thing is that what if these kids can't come in the sandbox and you can't come out? It's really not necessary for that to happen in order for you to still be able to communicate with them, to sense them, to see them, even feel each other. You know what I mean? And it's kind of the way that we function. It's like we're in our own little bubbles to some degree, but we're also in this shared space. But it's just a matter of what we allow ourselves to perceive, what we finally allow ourselves to pay attention to, versus, you know, like having our blinders on, which a lot of us
Yeah.
do.
And isn't that kind of a metaphor, or not even a metaphor, it's a strict example of relationships, like not just romantic relationships, I mean just relationships in general. When we relate to other people in our job or our partners or our friends even, you know, we're having this experience that we're trying to have, and we're trying to understand it from our own right, but then what our experiences are gives us the lens that we're seeing the other people through too.
Yeah. And you know, another thing that happens, unfortunately, is a lot of us were told, or some people were told when they did, because you know, like you may have seen things when you were little, like maybe you saw things at night, maybe you had a lot of people had imaginary friends or whatever it was. All of these things that speak to our sensitivity and being able to sense or tune into the non-physical, most children are told it's imaginary. Like it's just you're making it up, or like, oh honey, don't
Or
say
it's
that
not true.
outside.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, so a lot of people suppress it or deny it or ignore it because they were told to at a very young age.
And that's a generational energetic passing down of fears and projections, you know, rather than it being actually investigatory and seeing like maybe this thing that I'm shutting down is actually real.
Right.
You know, and part of the fear of it too is like nowadays what we're seeing with, you know, mental illness or wellness, whatever it is that we're trying to understand something that we're never really going to be able to understand. So we're creating these buckets for it. And if there's one thing that your child shows evidence of what we've created to be a mental disorder, you're going to try to shut that down immediately to, avoid it coming to fruition somehow.
I think too, like even we consider our own experiences and just like give yourself a second not to dismiss it, right? Like even if you're
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, this empath stuff sounds kind of weird, but yeah, maybe sometimes, yeah, I can feel the tension in a room if I walk in, or I can tell if someone's upset, but that's no big deal. Okay. No, well, let's just say, what if that was just really freaking interesting? Like, would you ever consider how can you tell what the energy is in a room when you walk into it?
Yeah.
Did you
Yeah.
ever think like, why is it I can tell that somebody's sad even though they're
Right.
smiling in my face? Like, think about that. Like, how do you
Yeah.
even know these things? How do you feel these things? How is this even in your like purview that
Yeah.
something is other than what it appears to be on the surface?
Mm-hmm.
Think about it. Like,
Yeah.
just have that, like, play with the possibility of like,
I think that's my default mode. I see you laughing on the video, but I can't hear anything because I know you muted it. So unfair. My joke just fell flat.
it did not. It was
Talk
well
about bad
received.
timing.
Honey, it was well received. This is the evidence of what happens when Mercury goes direct. Things are a little like wonky for a second, like, oh, we're coming back to communicating well.
Yes, that's
We're
nice.
doing all right. We're doing all right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Ugh. Yeah.
So
So,
we're talking managing the energy. I think one
yes.
really important aspect of it is how do we not take on other people, or not take on, because we kind of touched on that, but how do we decipher between energy we've taken on and energy that doesn't belong to us?
Yeah. Oh, you're asking.
That was
I thought you
a
were just
inquiry statement.
transitioning into the conversation. I was like, oh, yeah, this is
I was
oh.
transitioning and then I handed you the baton.
I didn't know. Okay, I got the
It was
baton.
an imaginary baton. Yeah.
Got it. I got it to
I'll
my
put more
leg
emphasis at the end of my sentences going forward.
so I don't use the wrong syllable.
So good.
Oh Jesus. Okay. What did you say?
I know, right? Rewind. Oh, I know. How Yolanda,
Oh,
tell us tell us about
yeah.
how you are able to decipher between energy that does not belong to you.
Okay, yeah. This one is, I'm really not trying to say this like in a way of being a smart ass, but this is like one of the most obvious ways. If you feel a certain way before you encounter somebody else and then you get around them and all of a sudden your energy shifts, probably not your energy. Like if you
Yeah.
were
That's
feeling really good and then all of a sudden you see your friend and then you're like, wah, wah. Like that's not yours. Don't take it.
yeah.
Don't do it. But then
Hold on, before you even go on, can we
oh
focus on that a little bit? Because I think
yeah.
that's super important. I
Mm-hmm.
have issues with that all the time because as an empath, now I see their vibration and now I want to like try to bring them out of it. But then sometimes I get stuck in it, just what we were talking about earlier, and it happens unconsciously. Then
Yeah.
all of a sudden you're in a bad mood and you're like, why did you fuck with me?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's one of the things. I mean, again, it sounds like not having compassion, maybe, but it's, all in how we view it. But one of the biggest things about being an empath and managing it is you have to learn how to be neutral. You
Yeah.
have to learn how to be able to maintain your own energy without like trying to make any adjustment to somebody else's field or like just literally observing them. You
Yeah.
just be in your little bubble, observe. If they're a friend and they're telling you whatever they are saying, you can still respond and like, what do you call it? Be supportive in what you say, but you don't have to bring your energy down. You don't have to like worry about what they choose to do with theirs. Cause then that'll send you into a whole nother head spin of like, come on, come on. And
Yeah.
sometimes people just want to wallow in their stuff until they don't, you know what I mean? So
And I
like,
feel like sometimes people put feelers out to bring people into their stuff so they're
yeah,
not doing it.
just smack those feet, just smack them. Like you cannot,
Smack the feelers away.
yeah, smack the
Get those
feelers
tentacles
away.
out of here.
Get them out of here. Cause like really as an empath, it will. I mean, it reminds me of, in the Facebook group, a couple weeks ago, people wanted to talk about energetic vampires.
Mm-hmm.
And knowing how to deal with energy vampires. And this really ties into this because it's like it all comes back to us and managing our energy. So if you're, this is a big one I hear, right? As soon as people come in this like realm of spirituality or become aware of their energy and you become more sensitive, that's the key word. Let me tell you, you become even more sensitive. You may have been sensitive already. Now you're going to be hypersensitive. So everyone around you, you're going to be hyper aware of their energy. And the default of that is to go like, oh my God, everybody's energy is bad. Oh, their energy is awful. Oh, I can't stand their energy. We go into this whole massive like realm of judgment, but it's just because everything has been amplified for us.
Yeah.
And instead of doing that, because it will cause us to go into solitude and totally isolate ourselves, we really have to go like, whoa, I am feeling way too much, whoa, this is a lot of what I'm picking up on. Manage your field. Like managing you is all you have to do. Anybody else's energy at the end of the day is not your business. Not to sound cold, but you have to be able to manage your own field. And by you learning to do that, you can support them in learning how to manage theirs. And we just keep paying it forward.
Right.
But everybody would be a freaking mess if we all chose to keep matching these frequencies of like chaos.
Which is what I think we do because we're unconscious and not mindful about our own energies.
Until they listen to this podcast.
I love the finger. That was amazing. It was very poignant. You really meant that. I felt it. I as an empath, felt that come through at the computer screen.
Well, yeah. So it's like if you're listening to the podcast on iTunes, you have to see what I did. Go to our YouTube channel.
But I loved it because I really understood by way of energy. But a component of what you were just saying too that I was thinking about as you were speaking is that we need to lead by example, right? So if we're trying to come down to that level as a healer, as an empath, or just as a human being, then we're not leading by example because you're not being cold or not compassionate by being neutral. You're trying to show what it could be. Like, hey, your energy's down, you're wallowing. Okay, I see you, I hear you. I'm going to remain here. You can come up here when you need to, but this is also where you want to be. You know, not putting ourselves on pedestals, but just saying I'm maintaining this, which I know is good because I know that's not good for you or for me.
Yeah. And then also seeing too that sometimes when people are wallowing, like even being able to hold that space for them to know it's part of the process too. Because listen, I even told Tiffany before we came on this video today, I had a full blown meltdown. No good reason. Just happened to have one. I was in my shit real nice and good like a couple hours ago. I let it out and now I'm back. Like
I'm kind of jealous because I've been having a low grade meltdown that's just kind of like, you know, low grade.
Honey, let it punch you in the face.
I do. I want all of it. Like, let's come up and like, let's let it go. So maybe I just got to free myself from myself a little bit.
Yeah. Or talk to somebody about it. Cause like, as you start to unravel, it'll just like, and then come out and you're like, oh, I don't even know. I just feel refreshed and put some oil on your head.
I love when you put the oil on, you just put it like right on your third eye too. I'm trying to tell her story and she's just dripping this oil right in the forehead. I'm like, what is that? Is that your ajna chakra lotion?
Honey, I need my eye to be clear. I need to see it all. But I didn't even answer your question. So I'm going to throw it back to you because I don't know that I answered it. You said, how do we know what energy is ours and which is not? So do you have any tips for that? And I hope I answered it somewhat. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I think it's a hard question to answer. And I think the only real way to attempt to understand the answer for deciphering energy that doesn't belong to us is to start, as Yolanda tells me all the time, is to get to know your own energy.
That's exactly, you just read my mind.
I know, it's the oil. Is to become so familiar with your own energy that these other energies was that a proud mom moment?
Yes, it was.
If you're listening on iTunes, you have got to watch the video. What are we at? Like 40-ish minutes or so?
Yeah.
Just fast forward to this point in time, 40-ish, 45-minute mark. So really getting to learn your own energy so much so that you can decipher when it doesn't feel like your energy, then you recognize that it's not your energy. And then you can consciously start to pinpoint where it's coming from and that you don't want it to be a part of your experience. Now, getting to know your energy and familiarize yourself with your own energy is a process. And it needs routine, it needs ritual, it needs discipline, and it needs friggin' just all out. You need to just dedicate yourself to you if you want to stop the madness of being, well, the perceived madness of being an empath, or the perceived madness of being a human being and not being able to understand your emotions. Because we're going to have emotions no matter what. And like having breakdowns is okay, but a breakdown doesn't define your life. You know, it's just that change of energy. It's a change of emotion. So once you start to get to know that and understand it, then you don't have to, it doesn't have to be your characteristic. It's just an experience.
And there you go, honey.
Yeah.
Oh, I have the flowers coming to the stage. Oh, Pumpkin, that was beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Tell him.
Thank you.
No, but it is so true. And, you know, I think that's why I fell in love with all of this work, whether, you know, Reiki was really like the one that cracked the door open for me, but with meditation and like astrology, tarot, all of them, my favorite part of them is like, yes, I love sharing with others, obviously. I mean, I love the space that we get to hold for other people because you learn so much through that. And it just, of course, it feels good to be able to hold space and share with other people. But there is nothing like what you learn and how much you change when you start applying these things to yourself, and you do let yourself finally see yourself. Like you really get to know you beneath the surface, beneath the projections, the perceptions, all the expectations that were put on you through life. And you finally go like, wait, who the F am I? You know what I mean? And so I know you look like a model. Like I keep glancing away because I do that when I talk. And every time I look back, I'm like, she looks like, you know, you look like, especially with the curtain in the background, you look like a model picture for like a photo booth. You know, the curtains that are behind you in a photo booth. Like if there were advertisements for photo booths, you would be it right now.
Wow. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. I got to call my agent.
Honey,
I got to find an agent to call.
No, I'll be your agent.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah, we get 10%, just so you know. It's on tape.
Yep, you got it. You got it.
Thanks, babe. So, yeah, no, I mean, that's one of the most beautiful things of all this work is like the depth of like what you reveal and just knowing yourself. And again, it kind of just leads to naturally starting to wake you up to that capacity you have and seeing how like, oh, the fact that I can sense and feel people is not something I should crawl under a rock about. It's really something that I can use. Yeah. Because it's like a superpower.
Yeah. And then again, back to this leading by an example aspect, you become a mirror for other people. Mm-hmm. Now, how great would it be if we had a bunch of empaths that knew how to manage their energy, walking about, interacting with each other? That would be amazing.
Can you imagine the balance that we could create in this field right now if we could all get on that program?
We could. Yeah. That's the program we need to be on.
We could shift this place.
That's what we need to do.
My mouth today. Cheers to that. I didn't have a potty mouth today.
I know, you're really good. I caught myself like twice already. Sorry. You're going to put the E on it. Is it on there permanently?
Explicit. I think so.
Okay, good.
I think it's just part of the show at this point. Yeah. Like we are explicit.
Don't they say that more highly intelligent people use potty language?
That's what you claimed on one of the podcasts. You did say that, and I didn't Google it to see how factual that was, but I'm gonna go ahead and
Google doesn't have all of the facts. Just start gathering facts of people you know, and if they swear or if they don't. I mean,
yeah, but I just want to believe you because it applied directly to us, so I'm gonna vote yes on that statement.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Yeah, I like it. Honey, we're on a good one today. I wonder if it is is this full moon madness? Is that what?
Listen, yesterday was intense all day. And I literally was walking around like, what the fuck is wrong with me? Sorry. And then when I was home by myself, I did 4 hours of work straight until 10 p.m. last night. And then I looked out my window and the moon had just risen to exactly the point that I looked at. I was like, oh, it's you. You're here.
Yeah.
Explains a lot. I wish I had known it earlier in the day so that I'd stopped worrying myself, but I wasn't managing my energy properly. So
Oh, I know about that sucker all day. Well, this is the last thing I want to point out. Because next time we are going to talk about the types of empaths, which is amazing.
yeah.
And then for our Patreons, we're going to talk about the gifts of empathy, which is going to be amazing.
Yes.
But one of the things too, I want to say, like, the beauty of recognizing your empathic nature and starting to tune into you and managing your energy and all of these things is that it'll also support you in showing up in your life more fully, because a lot of us do disengage from so much because of that sensitivity. So not only would you like possibly turn down invitations to like parties and going to concerts or all of these things, you know, we don't have to miss out on so much because we're sensitive. We just have to learn how to manage it. But one of the big ones I think about is the news, because when my sensitivity was at an all-time high and I didn't know how to manage it, I could not watch the news. I got irritated because my mom would tell me about the news every day, and I didn't want any parts of it because it just disturbed my whole being. And even though now I still am not a big news watcher, but I don't avoid it the way that I did. And part of it is because now I manage my energy and I can deal with it. But because of the state of what is going on in this world, it's important for us, especially empaths, to be able to manage ourselves so that we can know what's going on in the world around us, because we can't help facilitate change with like putting our heads in the sand. So I mean, it's important on so many levels of like why we acknowledge the sensitivity and learn how to use it in a way where we're supporting ourselves and the collective.
Right. That's a really great point. I'm still in that phase of completely avoiding it because it's too much for me.
Honey, I think we all go through that phase.
Yeah. But it is a good point. We have to be aware of what's going on in order to have the knowledge of knowing how people need to be supported. Yeah, it's a very, very dynamic circumstance for sure.
It totally is.
And I think this is a conundrum that a lot of people are in right now, because they are highly sensitive and they're like, I don't want to see it, but yet they're not understanding the gift and the power of the highly sensitive person that they could be out there executing, which brings it back around to ourselves. We're the responsible ones to be the superheroes to help people. But
well, it reminds me of like the contribution that we all have. I mean, whether we like literally show up to like volunteer in the world, whether you're a parent and you're like taking care of your kids, whether you're not parents like Tiffany and I, and you're just like want to help whomever cares to show up to be helped. We all contribute in some way, but not just in action. We also contribute to the collective and our frequency and vibrations that we hold, which is another reason why this work is so important. Because while there is a lot of fear and upset that's going on in the world around us, if we are empaths and we are looking away because of our own fear and discomfort of what's going on in the world around us, we're contributing to that frequency of fear and upset, but from a very different lens, but it's still fear. So really it's like in order to like create some kind of shift of like trying to create a transformation or support what's going on, we have to be more in our authority outside of our fear and really owning the fact like, yeah, I can sense stuff. And so how can I help with what I am sensing around me? Yeah.
Totally.
That's all I got on this topic. I mean, like I want to drop the mic and talk about types of empaths next week.
Yeah, I know. I think that's a really great wrap to this conversation. I do.
No, but really, no, seriously though, is there something else that you
Well, I want to piggyback off of that, because I think a lot of times it's not easy being highly sensitive, and we look at it as a curse. And I have missed out on a lot of things because I just can't handle getting out there. I can't handle the thought of it, or, you know, what it does to me the next day and all that stuff. But there have been times where I've managed my energy and got out there and felt better for having been out than I would have had I hermited. So it's this like constant balance, that it's really worth it to manage your energy, because yes, it is super intense to feel all of this stuff, and to hermit doesn't behoove us either. You know, it takes away from our experience and from our own energy as well. So because energy is a shared thing.
Yeah.
We get it because we share it with people. And, you know, if we're all one, we all want to be out there together, connecting and experiencing and living life, versus like having people in their little hermit huts.
No, totally. And even though we're going to talk about the gifts of being an empath on the Patreon page, just one quick thing I want to say for healers, because I know a lot of healers see, like, just like you said, I mean, being an empath could be such a gift in that capacity, and that you're able to tune into what people are holding, what they're feeling, all of these things. But when you allow yourself to learn how to manage your energy, then it can be a tool. And your empathic nature then allows you to translate these different things that you're picking up on. But again, without it going across the line into where it's impacting your personal life now, because you've taken it on as your own. There's a difference between being an empath and picking up and sensing energy and using that as a tool of like a message, versus like taking it on as your home and then going home and your day is wrecked because somebody.
Yeah, it's like leaving your work at work.
Yeah, no, exactly. So yeah, if you are sensitive, know that what we're saying isn't like turn off. It's just learning how to manage it so that it can be useful.
Right. And don't be scared of keeping it turned on, because keeping it turned on is who you are. And it's just a learning curve. And it's a high, steep learning curve, but it is achievable to get to, and worth it.
And again, you know, just sit on that, chew on that fact of like, man, I am sensitive. I do feel people's energy. I do feel the tension in the room. I do feel these. And I mean, if you just think about it, I mean, you're pretty freaking amazing, and it is fascinating. So, and the more we acknowledge it, the more we even allow ourselves to come to understand it. So,
right. And the more you can use it to alchemize life in a better manner for everybody. You know, not just for yourself, but for everybody around you.
Yeah. And last one. No, I mean, for me, you could keep going.
No.
It's like every time we keep reminding each other, it's like we trigger thoughts for each other. Boom, 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 boom. But it reminds me of too, like even for parents, or again, like you said, in relationships, sometimes when we are able to use this like gift of being able to tune into what people feel or what's going on for them, it also stops us from reacting from our own egos or personalizing everything.
Oh yeah.
Because we can like see so like, good. Oh, they're in their upset and it has nothing to do with me. They're
do we have to do an ego versus empath?
Honey, that would be a good one.
Ooh, I know. Ooh.
Yeah. Honey,
I'll write that one down.
Write it down.
Coming at you soon.
Honey, yeah, we should put that added into the gifts portion.
Ooh, that's an interesting one.
You know, it really is. And
how the ego affects an empath.
Yeah.
Something along those lines. I don't want to give it all away. We'll talk about it behind the scenes.
We'll talk about it behind the scenes, and we'll get back at you. So where can people find us this week?
Outer space.
What's coming up?
What's coming up? So, well, this is Wednesday that you're listening to this. Although it's not Wednesday when we're recording it, but that's all right. Trickery. So coming up, well, the beginning of the month is coming up. So for our Patreon members, our MBE insiders, we do an energy of the month podcast, video, webinar, whatever you want to call it, for all the things that are happening with the cosmos that are coming up. We do card readings, and then we just talk about whatever these energies and cards up and coming of the month spur in our minds, which, as you know, if you've been listening to us, anything could keep us spiraling off into different topics.
Yeah.
And then,
I'm excited about this monthly update because we're moving it. Well, we're literally in right now Virgo season, and then we move into Libra. So I'm excited about both of those energies for different reasons, but of course we'll talk about
I just realized that my 3 main signs on my birth chart are all in a row. I didn't know that until you just said that right now. I never picked up on that. It's really my time to shine, isn't it?
It is your time to shine. It's your time to shine. And then
but also every time we do one of these topics, within that week before we do topic number 2, Yolanda and I do a Dear Diary on our Patreon to share our experience through the week. Just a little raw, uncensored meltdown, maybe.
Yeah, sometimes.
Sometimes
Sometimes it is.
it's just a very real share of, having the experience of what it is we're talking about.
Yeah. And what like really comes up for us that weekend. I mean, we can't predict that. So
Yeah.
sometimes it is not fuzzy.
Right. Yeah, most of mine haven't been very fuzzy, I don't think. Am I supposed to be sharing fuzzy stuff? I can.
I mean, we're sharing based on what the topics are. I mean, maybe we should start talking about things like skipping through a field of daisies, and then you may have.
Yeah, that's true. We should.
That could be. But, and the Facebook Lives. So you guys are listening to this, it's pre-recorded, yes, but bi-weekly we do Facebook Lives. So if you want to like come share with us live, share your questions, interact, whatever you feel up for, come to our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/MBE project, and follow the page, and you can come to our live events.
And in the meantime, if you can't join the live event, it'll be recorded and on our website following the recording, but also at any point in time on any topic, even past ones, if you want to make comments or send us questions via email or on Instagram or on Facebook, we're very accessible. So please feel free to contact us and share your experience, because you are why we do this.
You are why we do this. Honey, this is such the truth. Yes.
It is.
We like really like our passion with this work, and we're so excited to share with all of you in this capacity. So like, please know, like, even when we are tired and want to cry, show up, because we love to be able to hold this space and share with community like you.
I almost napped right through our appointment today. I just took a little shut eye.
I almost cried through it. Nap, cry, whatever, but we showed
we managed our energy and we got here. We did this.
So, honey, it was good to see your face today. And for all of you out there, be sure to follow us all over the place. MB Project, you can find us.
Thank you for listening.
Yeah, we'll see you next week.
Bye.